Claude Code is now available on the web. So I have access. I have a max plan in Claude, which is normally, I think, $200 a month. This is going to be important later because the limitations are going to be important here. This is a big deal, a really big deal. We're going to talk about what exactly Claude Code is and why this is exciting. I'm going to give you a quick run through of my version. I built something just before this live and we'll have a look at it and see how it went. The news here is that Claude Code, one of the most powerful coding tools available, is now available in a web version. Specifically, you can go into Claude and there is a new button which says Code, and that allows you to access Claude Code directly in your browser. Even more exciting, you can access it on your telephone via the Claude app, which means I am never going to sleep again, because if I'm sleeping, I'm not productive. There were ways to use Claude Code on your telephone. For example, you could remote access in. There are ways to give it a nice visual interface on the desktop as well, but it all required a bit of a workaround. It required you to know what you were doing with Claude Code and then to apply these additional layers to make your life a bit easier. Claude have just done away with all of that by giving us a web version. So introducing Claude Code on the web. You can now delegate coding tasks to Claude without opening your terminal. This is a very anthropic way to say it. You can delegate coding tasks to Claude without opening your terminal is a very tech and code specific way to explain what this is. They're talking to the developers here who are, I don't think, necessarily the people who are going to be excited about this. Compare this to something like Lovable, where Lovable's tagline is, creating the last piece of software. Because once we create this piece of software, you'll be able to create all other pieces of software. What Claude Code have done is they've built their own version of Lovable, and we're going to look into why this is exciting. It's much closer to a vibe coding tool that anyone can pick up and play with. There's still some limitations that require some technical knowledge, but it's a lot easier than before. But Anthropic, in true Anthropic style, are still saying you can delegate coding tasks without opening your terminal. With Claude Code on the web, assign multiple tasks that run in parallel while you monitor and steer from your browser or iOS app. Cool. Ideal for tackling bug backlogs, routine fixes, and parallel development work. So they are putting it forward as a tool for high-end developers who are already using Claude Code in the command line interface. They know what they're doing. Anthropic saying that's cool, but now you can also check in and do minor work via the web app. So they're very much targeting this at existing developers, but I think it's wider than this. Claude Code on the web is now in beta as a research preview for Pro and Max users. Let's have a look at it. The reason this is exciting is because Claude Code is really powerful, but unless you know what you're doing, you know your way around the command line interface, you know how to install dependencies, you know how to use terminal on Mac, for example, then you're not going to be able to access it. So I've got on screen right now the current Claude Code setup guide, which the standard installation, step 1 is to install Claude Code, run the following command. It doesn't tell you where. You just open up your terminal, but they assume you know that. The command is npm install -g at Anthropic AI Claude Code. It requires somebody to know how to use a terminal. They also need dependencies. I think they need Node, Node.js 18, etc. So they'd have to install that first. For somebody who's never used a command line, it's just going to be very difficult for them to get access to Claude Code. What they've done with Claude Code web version is reduce that barrier. So this is my version of Claude. I actually have access to something which isn't public yet, so I'm going to make sure that's not visible. I'm allowed to talk about it on Thursday. For full disclosure, I have been given access to Claude Max plan, which is normally, I think, $200 a month. I get it for free, and I get previews of things so I can try them out early. So I've now got Claude Code web open on my browser. The way you find it is there's a code button added to the sidebar. Claude Code is in research preview. What you can see on screen is very similar to a Lovable, to a Bolt, to a Replete, to any other kind of vibe coding tool, where you have on the left-hand side a message window where you can talk to it. I notice you can only submit. You could change your prompt and say, let's discuss this. It's nice to have an ask mode, which they have in other tools. And then you connect Claude Code to a GitHub repository. Again, you have to know what GitHub is, which some people starting out won't know. So there's a few hoops you need to jump through, and then you can build an application using chat. It uses Claude Code, one of the best coding agents out there, built on top of Sonnet 4.5. I put in a very basic prompt. At the moment, I'm doing a daily workout at home, and I wanted to create a basic tracking app that allows me to, as I work through that workout, tick things off. So I want to build a web app for my daily workout routine. Here's the routine, and I gave it the routine. That's all I gave it. And then I said, let's design an app for tracking. It built the folder structure, it created the HTML with the workout blocks, CSS styling, JavaScript for tracking. It made it so it's persistent, so it will remember workouts, etc. And it built everything and it did it in one go. The result is fine. I gave it very basic instructions, but it allows me to reset the workout, it allows me to tick things. It built me a timer. I didn't ask it to, but that's a nice thing to do. So I can tick my 5K run. Then I've got shadow boxing. Again, I can tick these. I can set timers. It's got rest timers as well. But then it's got things like push-ups, standing band rows, etc. I'm going to flesh this out, but the basics are all here. And then some rehab work for my ankle and a stretch and cool down. This is now an application that I can open anywhere because it is on a web page. I can use this as a quick and dirty application to track my workout. Of course, I could have used pen and paper, but we don't do that anymore. We build things. So it works really well. It is Claude code, but it is inside a web browser and it's available on the application as well. This is really big, not for people who are developers already, because they are comfortable with the command line interface. They're going to be fine with what they have already. This is for them probably a nice little addition because it allows you to quickly make corrections or create a little branch while you're on your phone. Maybe you have an idea and you're like, oh, maybe we could try this, and then you can merge it later. I think for serious developers, though, this is probably just a nice to have rather than a really exciting, essential new tool. For people who are dabbling with vibe coding, maybe they've used Lovable, maybe they've used Bolt, and they're looking for the next step. The next step tends to be something like Cursor, which is a more complicated but more powerful tool, or Claude Code or ChatGPT Codex. These are like the next steps. They are much more technical. That technical barrier has now been reduced and Claude Code can be accessed by pretty much anyone. There are still going to be some hoops, like when you want to run this, you need to have a local server, which for a lot of people is, what the hell is that? How do I do that? These are things that can be worked out. So I'm excited. I think this is awesome. I'm glad that they've pushed it through. I think what we'll see, though, is the response will be muted because the people who are excited about this kind of stuff will think, oh, I don't need this. I'm already using Claude Code. What's this for? Who's this for? Whereas the people who do need this won't necessarily know how exciting this is. So I think it's going to be a weird product launch for that reason. But personally, I'm very excited. I'm going to hop over to some questions. Hey, Joshua, how are you doing? I'm going to try to hop over some questions if I can find my pedal. There we go. So it's Claude Code. You go into Claude, there will be a code button on the left-hand side. I think it's rolled out everywhere. One issue will be how much capacity you have. It's only on the paid plans right now, it's not on the free plan. On the pro plan, which is $20 a month, there may be a limited amount that you can do with it. I have not tested this. I haven't seen anyone talking about it, but I know Anthropic of being not mean. They've limited capacity on some of their models and tools. So I would not be surprised if we see something similar with Claude Code, with a lot of people later today being like, what the hell? I gave it 3 prompts and I've run out of space for the day. I wouldn't be that surprised. If you are on the max plan, which is $200 a month, obviously you're going to get a lot more. I have no idea how much yet, so I'll mess around with it later. But I imagine this will be a problem.